Hi, I'm Frank D'Angelico, and life sounds like the church. Let me tell you about my involvement, my love, my continued devotion to the church. Not the building with the cross on top, but the Australian band. Started around 1980. I was in my first year of high school in Sydney, and like many of us back then, Sunday at 6, we turn on the TV and there's Countdown. And out comes this band called The Church playing what's still probably one of their best known songs, a song called The Unguarded Moment. They were different to a lot of the bands playing at that time. They were a little bit aloof. They wore eyeliner back then in 1980. It was before all the new romantic Boy George and all that arrived. Steve Kilbey had eyeliner on, and a few of us paid attention and went, wow, these guys are really cool. Paisley shirts, a little bit of a remnant from the 70s, and a sound that was unlike anything. One of the first bands in a long time in Australia that had two lead guitarists. Skyhooks were in the early to mid 70s did it. And then the Church came out with two lead guitarists, which gave them such an amazing sound, which made a lot of us pay attention. I ran out as soon as I could. The very second album that I bought with my own money was Of Skins and Heart, which featured Unguarded Moment. And as I played through that, it was instant. My love for the band was instant. A couple of them were Sydney-based, so there was always that tremendous, and I lived in the inner west in Sydney, and a couple of them lived in suburbs nearby, so there was always that tremendous sort of hope that you might run into them one day and kind of figure out, what am I going to say if I do? I remember walking down Glebe Point Road, just at the intersection of Hereford Street, and there was a phone box. For you young people, that's how we used to ring each other back then. And there was Steve Kilbey, the lead singer, on the phone. I must have been 14 or 15. And I don't know what he was doing at the time, but he was on the phone box, and I knew that he lived nearby, and bugger me, here it was. Here was Steve Kilbey in a phone box. And I chickened out and I didn't say anything. I just walked away, and he kind of saw me with this sort of piss off kid look. And I thought, right, that's it. That's my cue. I'll just keep walking. Fast forward to their next album, The Blurred Crusade, which is still one of my favourite albums in the world. It's funny how things stick in your mind, and as you go through life, how often they come up. The intro drum beat of a song called When You Were Mine, when I listen to it, the actual beat of it is sometimes about the same speed as the clicking of the blinker in my car. And as soon as the blinker starts clicking, I can hear the intro of When You Were Mine, which is just one of my favorite things in life. It's now over 40 years old, and it sticks in my mind, and it's just one of those things that I'll never ever forget. The whole album is still one of my favorite albums in the world. Jump to the next album, which was an experimental album for them. They were just starting to make some headway in the States, and then they released this sort of alternative album called Seance, which is very, very moody. And I remember hearing Steve Kilbey talk about it recently, and it was about a breakup with a woman, and it was the melancholy result of that. And he said his producer rang him from the States and said, "This album's shit. We're never going to publish this in the States," And that was the result. But people like me just embraced it, and people like and the devoted Church fans just embraced it. They then went through a period of various more experimental stuff, and you go through these love and hate periods of listening to a band. Then they came out with this album called Starfish, of which on that album is a song called Under the Milky Way. And again, you talk about probably the best known song by the Church, and it's Under the Milky Way. It did really well in the Australian charts. But then it did super well around the world because it was featured on a show called Miami Vice. You remember, beard, stubble, linen suits, cops in Ferraris and things like that. And then that took them again to the world stage. They spent some time in the States, and that song just resonates. And it's, I think, for me and for a lot of other people, along with other great Australian songs like Paul Kelly's How to Make Gravy, I think Under the Milky Way has very much become an Australian anthem. You're getting old when you're doing your shopping at Woolworths or wherever it is, and it's part of the music that's playing in the background. You go, well, I've now hit that point in my life. But for me, Under the Milky Way is without doubt one of my very favourite songs of theirs. I couldn't possibly pinpoint one favourite song of the Church. There's been so much music. There's been close to 30 albums and 1,000 side projects by all of the band members. But Under the Milky Way would be up there in the top 10. Fast forward, there were lots of other things produced. There were a couple of EPs produced that were just beautiful. And I'm just going to jump forward to recent times. And they've just released an album called The Hypnagogue. And for old school church fans like myself and many, many others around Australia, it is an absolute masterpiece of what we know the church to be. The whole dual guitar things. They've now got Ash Naylor, who's played with every great Australian musician in Australia and in the world. They've also got Ian Hogg, ex-Powderfinger. And the majesty of the two of them playing together is a return to those early albums where we had that wonderful double lead guitar thing going on. I saw them in Brisbane about 6 years ago, and this is one of my favourite stories, and I tell this story with monotonous regularity when I play with my own band. But I saw them, I hadn't seen them for about 5 or 6 years. I was in Brisbane, they were playing at the Triffid, one of the great venues in Australia. They played and it was probably lighting, sound, everything. It was as good as it gets. So they played and they were just on fire. And you know what it's like when you see a band and they're not just playing the music, but they're having a great time. It was one of those nights, right? So they played, everyone was in ecstasy, off they went. At the very end, the drummer, Tim Pals, came out with some props. He came out with the mandatory drumsticks that a lot of drummers throw out. But he also came out with a tambourine. And as everybody was applauding, he held the tambourine above everybody's head to say, please thank Peter Coppers, you know, the guitarist. Please thank Steve Kilby, blah, blah. And he went through the whole process of everybody was cheering. And after that, he took that tambourine and he lofted it into the air. And off it went into the crowd. I'm about halfway in, right? And this thing shimmered through the crowd. It shimmered through the crowd. And I looked up and I thought, bugger me, I've got this. I've got this. And I'm very proud to say, the guy in front of me that leapt in front of it, very sorry about putting my elbow on your shoulder and pushing you down, because this is that tambourine. I'm so happy about this, and I use this regularly, and I play with my own band regularly. I was down in Sydney recently, and I saw the Church play at the Enmore Theatre, again, one of the great venues in Australia. And I finally got to meet them all. I did the full fanboy meet and greet. I paid the extra money and I went in for sound check, and then you had your sort of 15 minutes to go and meet them all. And I finally got to say thank you to Tim. Thank you, Tim, again. I've used that story a lot, almost to the point where people are going, you kind of maybe should stop telling that story. We've all heard it now, Frank, but I don't care. I'm going to keep telling it. But I finally got to say thank you to Tim, and he was so genuinely thrilled by the fact that you know, I told the story and I was talking about the church when I'm playing my own music, etc. And he said, oh, send me a photo of it, which I did, thinking, oh yeah, it's probably a nice gesture. You know, this guy's paid extra money to be here, so I better be nice to him. So I sent him the photo, and then he actually signed it and edited it and put this wonderful graphic on it and sent it back to me. How cool is that? Like, so if I wasn't already the world's biggest church fan, I now am. So life for me sounds like the church, and I will forever be under the Milky Way.